Hi there, my name's Clement Ye. I'm an artist and an art instructor, and I live here in beautiful Kamloops, BC. So today I am doing a demo of how to do a self-portrait using a mirror on a vertical surface. And I'm going to be drawing with vine charcoal, charcoal pencil, and compressed charcoal with a kneadable eraser. The paper I'm using is called Academia, and it's pretty common drawing paper in art school. And kind of a medium weight, low tooth, so not very much texture, and inexpensive. So I have my mirror set up and my drawing surface with on the right of my subject, which is important because you want the drawing to be, your drawing surface to be on the side where your dominant hand is, which I'm right hand dominant, and you don't want to ever have your drawing surface on the opposite side of your dominant hand, because then you'd be drawing over, looking at your subject over your drawing arm, and it's just not natural. You want to have your body opened up with your subject in front of you, and then you're not twisting your body too much. And the drawing surface is roughly oriented to your body about 45 degrees to the subject that you're looking at, or less. So that when you're moving your eye from your subject to the drawing surface, you're just not having to move quite as far, and then the transfer of information is a little bit more efficient. So something that one of my instructors taught me years ago. Since I have my mirror here, but you're not able to see what I'm seeing, I'm gonna take a photo of my self-portrait and add it to the corner, and then you're gonna be able to see how I'm gonna have that, be drawing that, and you can have that as a reference. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to start with my charcoal pencil, and I'm using an overhand grip like this as opposed to a pencil grip, which is, you know, your writing grip. When I'm working on a vertical surface and I'm utilizing my full range of arm motion, and I also have the ability to step back from the drawing and take a gander at how the proportions and tone are working, if some areas are being overdeveloped whereas other areas are underdeveloped. So with a vertical drawing, it's just really great to be able to step back and take it all in and utilize that entire range of motion coming from your arm, which allows you to work freer and work at a larger scale. And that is how I was trained, and that's how I would like to train all my students. I do a lot of drawing in my sketchbooks, but this setup was really crucial to my training. I'm gonna get right into it. I have my subject here, and what I do first is I start laying down some very, very light construction lines. See how I'm holding my pencil choked down like this as opposed to way up here? And this just allows me to make strokes that are kind of lighter and more gestural, like that, as I'm trying to find where my drawing is going to sit. And as long as I keep these lines, which I call construction lines, fairly light, then I don't necessarily have to commit to keeping them, because as the drawing develops, the lines that I choose to keep are going to get progressively more dark and developed, and then the lighter ones will recede, and I don't necessarily have to erase all of them. Some of them will just kind of get pushed back. Okay, so I'm roughing in where my neck is going to go. And I've got the collar of my sweater. And shoulders. So whenever you're drawing clothing, you definitely want to try to draw the body underneath the clothing, because the clothing is just kind of like a shell. It's stuff on top, but you need a foundation. You need a structure to put the clothing on top of, right? So I'm making lines that suggest where the anatomy underneath the clothing sits, keeping them light so that when I finish the clothing on top, it just looks like it sits on top of a person. Okay. The basic proportions, general proportions of the human face and the body, as established by Leonardo da Vinci, one of my favorites, stipulates that the eye line is halfway down the face. If you go from the top to the bottom, eyes are roughly halfway. And this is not always understood by some beginning drawers, because they might, a common mistake might be that they underprivilege the amount of space that the forehead takes up, especially mine. So same with the back of the head in profile. A lot of times it doesn't get as much space as it deserves. Okay, so eye line, halfway from the eye line to the chin is the nose. Those two lines correspond to the top of the ear and the bottom of the ear. Halfway between the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin is the mouth. And if I happen to be going a bit fast, it's because I'm trying to squish a demo into 20 minutes. And there's a combination of talking and looking back at you, and then drawing, checking my subject matter, and all those things. So nice thing about videos is you can always rewind and start it over. And that's something that I've definitely learned from teaching in a COVID, teaching in the year of COVID, is if we can learn anything, it's that making videos can enhance learning, because students have the opportunity to watch the content over again, whereas in the past we didn't. Okay, so I do develop the eyes quite a bit when I'm starting out, because while I don't want to ever overdevelop one part of a drawing to the detriment of another, but I like to have the eyes fairly well established, because the way I've learned is that that's where the face kind of starts. I have the general shape so that I know roughly where the head is going to sit, but I like to develop the face from the eyes outwards. And then oftentimes these contours might shift a little bit, but they're not going to be crazy off, right? So I'm going to just verify with my subject matter the shape of my eyes. And eyes typically are fatter on the inside, closer to the nose, than the outside, where they taper off a little bit. So I just try to keep that in mind, and I draw the pupil. Typically on many people, the pupil is going to be more obscured by the top lid than the bottom, just the way it sits. And my upper lid is not particularly fat, but it is there. Some people, you don't see it at all in a relaxed position. Some people, it's quite pronounced. And mine, it's got kind of a sliver. And I do like to shade it in because for some reason that helps me. When they're not shaded in, I find it harder to see them as eyes when I'm figuring out my proportions. That's just one of my weird quirks. Okay. Let's see here. My eyebrow actually needs to go up higher. And I'm going to block out a little bit of shading around here because that helps me place the next eye in proportion to it and make sure that spacing is correct. So how I figure that out is I approximate how big is that shadow area, and then there's a highlight right next to it, and then there is the other eye, something like that. And because the other eye right here would curve away from you, so it's farther from the viewer than this eye, and the way it curves from you makes it narrower in width. The same would go for this side of the nose, this part right here, and the cheek. Everything over here curves away from you, so it's going to be smaller. Notice that I switch to the pencil grip whenever I'm doing some smaller details. Just gives me a little bit more control. Okay, how's that looking? That width, that space between the eyes is just really, really crucial to kind of establishing the identity of your subject. You know, you want to make sure your person looks like your person, and there's just so much focus in what's going on around the eyes. The top of the eyeball tends to be darker than the bottom part, so I put quite a lot of black near the top. And then at this point, I am looking to see where the edge of my head actually shows up. So it's going to be about there. I'm going to switch to my Vine charcoal. Like, both of these are acceptable for initial sketching, but the Vine charcoal can do darker, fatter tones, but it also can wipe away easier. So if there are lines that I don't want to keep, then I just kind of smudge them and they go away. And right now I'm just trying to establish the contour of my face right here. And one of the tricks to figuring out that shape is sometimes to look at the negative space, which is the void around your object and not the object itself. So they share an edge, right? There's an edge here and there's an edge here. They share the edge, but sometimes looking at the shape of that negative space allows you to see it more clearly than the shape of the object. So it comes down, I've got a jaw here, and then it's going to come down like here. And I'm going to suggest a bit of the muscle mass right here where my cheek is, but I'm not going to draw a line straight all the way down because I just don't have that much mass there, you know, whether it's fat or just things sagging with age. You know, give it 20 years or something, and I'll get there, but I'm not there yet. Okay. And then I have a cast shadow coming down right there. So blocking in those shadows can help you get to the next feature, because you're kind of lining up one shape against the next one. So I have a shape here. There's the divot under the nose. It's pretty important. And then upper lip. Again, the right side of the upper lip that's turned away from you, from this perspective, it would be this side. It's turned away from you. It's going to appear narrower in width than this side. Okay. How's that looking? I'm going to squint my eyes. You close your eyes halfway, and sometimes that allows you to see the proportions more clearly, because it kind of obscures some of the details and you're just looking at masses and tone and shapes. So I squint my eyes, check my subject. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to go with it for now, but I can always change it if I need to. So sometimes if my proportions are off, I might not realize it until later, and that's okay. It's a process. Every single drawing has its own personality. It takes on its own life. It's virtually impossible to reproduce a drawing identically without some kind of technological aid, because there's just too many variables. All right, let's make that lower lip a little bit softer, and let's bring that cheek down. I've got some shadow area right there where my mouth tucks in to the sides. There's often a little bit of shadow area right in there. You don't have to be too dark, you just suggest it, right? You allow the viewer to fill things in with their imagination. Shadow area there, and then as predicted, the contour of my chin ends up being a little bit lower than my initial sketch, which is totally okay, because that's just the way things go. Okay, I'm going to block in some shadow right here. How I fill in this area with a lot of shading. And I'm creating these planes where the head turns away from you, right? So right here on this ridge, there's a major shadow area right there and right there. And then the light skims past into a softer area called the reflected light. So you have a highlight, shadow area, reflected light, another highlight area in here. Okay. So ears are just funny things. They're different on everybody, but the general shapes inside don't change. And when you've drawn enough of them, then it just kind of becomes second nature, just these weird kind of lumpy masses inside. but it is good to just double check your source material to see if there's any particular aspects about the ears that distinguish themselves from any run-of-the-mill ordinary ear that you get off the street. Okay, fine charcoal. I think I'm coming up close to my 20-minute mark. So, as much fun as I'm having, I may have to wrap this up. I'm going to spend another minute or so laying down some more tone. And call it good. So it's not meant to be a finished drawing. Because the definition of what makes something finished is, it's very debatable. But it is definitely, even though it's not meant to be a finished drawing, this is a demo on some basic techniques. Hopefully that can help you out with figure drawing and self-portraits. And a lot of your future work could be built on those basic principles. So thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time. Stay safe.